1923's finale leaves one big Yellowstone connection a mystery for the Duttons. The Yellowstone prequel series, 1923, has come to a close, but there's one interesting connection between the shows we still don't know about. Taylor Sheridan's Yellowstone franchise now spans a nearly double-digit total of seasons, examining the Dutton Ranch from the time before it was settled in the 1880s to its present-day fate, and there's still more to come. Not only is Sheridan working on present-day, spin-offs focusing on other ranches and characters from the original show, but he also has plans to continue exploring period prequels. 1923's ending saw Spencer Dutton finally return to Montana, where he lived up to his purpose by defeating the ranch's enemies and killing Donald Whitfield. Despite the death of his wife, Alex, Spencer will press on as the ranch's leader and owner, raising his son, John Dutton II, to one day take his place. One of the upcoming Yellowstone spin-offs is 1944, set to pick up the story over 2 decades later, continuing to paint a more complete picture of the Dutton family. Aside from exploring the early days of the Duttons, the Rainwaters, and the cycle of land developers trying to steal the ranch's land, 1923 Season 2 also provided the origin story for an unlikely subject, the train station. This place was introduced in Yellowstone Season 1 as the location where the ranch hands hide dead bodies. It plays a pivotal role throughout the series, and even works its way into the Yellowstone series finale in a monumental moment. 1923 Season 2 showed that the train station wasn't actually a discovery made by the Duttons, but by Donald Whitfield, allowing him to dispose of a body. Yet oddly enough, this information wasn't actually passed to anyone from the Yellowstone Ranch at any point in the season. So we have a concept that died with the show's villains that will now somehow end up as the Dutton Ranch's knowledge nearly a century later. The only character sent to the train station in 1923 was Christy. After Lindy killed her, Whitfield needed to dispose of the body. With the events of Yellowstone and the show's flashbacks included, there were 7 more bodies dropped in the train station. Characters like Jamie Dutton suggest that the family has been using it to dispose of their enemies for generations, so it shouldn't be too long after 1923 that our protagonists discover the drop-off spot. The Montana winds howled across the wide plains like a whisper from the future, carrying with them the unanswered questions of a family whose legacy was being forged in blood, grit, and sacrifice. The 1923 finale didn't tie things up neatly. Instead, it offered the audience a haunting reminder that the Dutton family story, spanning generations, was far from finished. And at the heart of the final moments was one question that echoed louder than a gunshot in the canyon. What is the true origin of the modern Dutton line, and how does it connect to Yellowstone's John Dutton idea? For all its dust-covered glory and frontier drama, 1923 built up to a climax not with resolution, but with raw tension. Jacob Dutton, Harrison Ford, and Kara, Helen Mirren, weary yet unbroken, held their family together like aging oak trees, rooted deep and weathered by storms. Spencer Dutton, their globe-trotting warrior, had finally begun the long and treacherous journey back to Montana. Alexandra, by his side, was torn between aristocratic duty and a life on the frontier. But it was the missing link, the fate of Spencer's line, that left the biggest mystery of all. Throughout Yellowstone, the present-day patriarch John Dutton IA, Kevin Costner, carries a reverence for his ancestors. But even he, the stoic keeper of the ranch, has never spoken in great detail about Spencer Dutton. The name doesn't echo in the halls of the lodge. It doesn't appear in the family photo wall. And as the credits rolled on the 1923 finale, fans were left to ask, if Spencer Dutton isn't John's grandfather, then who is? The most logical assumption had always been that Spencer, the youngest and most capable Dutton in 1923, would return to Montana, have children, and thus continue the line. But 1923 didn't confirm that. In fact, the series only made the waters murkier. With John Dutton Sr. now dead, killed in a brutal ambush early in the series, and Jack Dutton, his son, barely holding on to the ranch alongside his fiancée Elizabeth, it raises the question, is Jack actually John Dutton IE's grandfather? Or could it still be Spencer? Therein lies the intrigue and the genius of Taylor Sheridan's sprawling Western universe. Instead of spoon-feeding audiences every genealogical breadcrumb, he leaves gaps. Gaps where mystery, speculation, and legend grow. In the final episode, Spencer and Alexandra are separated in Europe after a brutal fight aboard a ship leads to Spencer being detained. Alexandra, heartbroken but determined, promises to find him. It's a moment of romantic tragedy, but also one of narrative weight. If they do reunite, if they make it back to Montana, what life do they build? The promise of a family, or a bitter end? Meanwhile, Jack and Elizabeth, who had announced their pregnancy earlier in the season, suffer a devastating miscarriage. The line they might have continued is seemingly cut short. But again, the show is quiet, deliberately so, on whether they'll try again, whether they will, against all odds, still birth the generation that eventually leads to John Dutton IA. The silence is deafening. This mystery isn't just about bloodlines. It's about identity, about legacy. The Yellowstone Ranch isn't just land. It's memory, pain, sacrifice. For John Dutton IEI to stake his life defending it in Yellowstone, he must carry within him the echoes of this past, whether through Spencer's war-forged soul or Jack's ranch-worn resilience. And yet, the show gives us something else. Cara Dutton's letter writing. She is the family's anchor, their voice, their record keeper. Her letters to Spencer, full of heartbreak, hope, and fury, suggest she sees him as the rightful heir, not just to the land, but to the burden of the Dutton name. Come home, she begs him. Your family needs you. Could it be that he returns, that he rebuilds, that he fathers a child whose child is the John Dutton we know? Or could the trauma of war and personal loss render Spencer unable to stay in Montana, leaving Jack, scarred but resilient, to carry the name forward? It's this ambiguity that 1923 leaves us with. A puzzle piece left deliberately vague, as if carved into the bark of an old tree without a name. In Yellowstone, John Dutton IE never speaks of Spencer, never recounts his heroic journey or his travels. Could that silence mean Spencer never returned? Or that he returned broken, unable to carry the weight of the ranch, and disappeared into legend? Taylor Sheridan is playing the long game. 1923 is only part of the picture. With a second season on the way, more answers may yet surface. But even then, Sheridan's approach favors the poetic over the explicit. He'd rather show a rusted photograph on a mantle than explain a family tree. Because to him, legacy is not about names and dates. It's about choices. About who chooses to fight for the land. Who chooses to stay. The biggest mystery left by 1923's finale is not simply who fathered whom, but who chose to be a Dutton when it mattered most. And perhaps that's the real thread tying this all together. Because in every generation, there is always one Dutton who must carry the torch. One who doesn't run from the fire, but into it. In 1883, it was James and Margaret. In 1923, it might be Spencer, or Jack, or even Elizabeth. In Yellowstone, it is John, and now maybe Case or Tate. It's that sense of chosen legacy, rather than lineage, that gives the Dutton saga its mythic weight. So as the wind whistles over the fields of Montana, and the ghost of Jacob Dutton rides quietly into legend. The mystery of the Dutton line remains just that, a mystery. But not a hole in the story. Rather, a shadow that stretches across time, daring us to look closer, to listen harder, and to remember that the roots of a family tree are often buried deepest beneath the surface. And if Spencer Dutton is the missing link, well, then the story of Yellowstone isn't just about holding onto the land. It's about finding your way back to it.